Welcome to Take Me With You, Episode 1. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen.
Aw.
Instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Yeah, we will. Today, we're talking to my co-host, Ryan Palmer. So that's interesting.
Yay! So I'm less guesty of a guest.
Yeah, more of a hosty guest. It's like when your roommate throws a party, and so like you live there, and then also like they're the one throwing the party. Maybe is that a good?
So it's
analogy?
like not your party, but it's still kind of your party.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah,
that.
kind of like that.
This is not totally your party, Ryan.
Well, you know what? I can live with that. But Cheryl and I thought that it would be a good idea to start this podcast out with getting to know us a little bit. So we're gonna, in this episode, Cheryl's gonna interview me about a travel thing, and in the next one, I get to interview Cheryl.
Yeah, that's exciting. And this is also a good test drive for our interview questions to see if they suck or not. So
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that they don't suck.
yeah.
I mean, mildly boring, I suppose, is acceptable,
That's,
but I'm hoping for not sucking.
Yeah, I would hope that our review of this podcast would not be mildly boring, but maybe mildly entertaining.
Yeah.
Can we go for that one
Okay,
instead? It's
I
like
mean, I'm hoping it's
the
more
glass
than mildly
half full
entertaining.
as opposed to the glass half empty, maybe.
There you go. Way to be the optimist.
There we go. That's my role in life. So there we go. So, Ryan, you are a science teacher of the high school persuasion.
Yep.
You are not a high schooler, to clarify. You're not like a Doogie
No.
Howser or anything.
No.
You're an average age teacher, not... What's the average age of a
Yes.
teacher? You probably are the average age of a teacher, huh?
Probably.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you live in the Seattle area and
Correct.
have done lots of travels, both in groups and on your own, and with students and with
Yes.
peers,
Yes.
and to various countries, mainly Europe. What
Yes.
continents have you been to?
Northern and Southern America, right? North America and South America, and Europe,
Okay.
and Oceania.
Oh, yeah. I heard is that like the new thing being taught now?
I don't know.
Okay.
It just sounds more impressive, I think,
It
for
does.
Australia and New Zealand. I don't know if Papua New Guinea is considered part of that, or if it's considered
so
part of the
close.
like
Yeah.
other islands, like the
Other.
Philippines and stuff like that.
The eighth
Well, I just couldn't
continent,
remember.
other.
Is that the Malaysian islands? Is that what that is? I don't remember what the names of those islands are.
Oceania. Yeah, because I always learned that there were 7 continents. And then one time I was in Spain and talking with this woman who was from like Central or South America. And we were talking about like how many continents we were taught there are. And she was
Oh,
taught that there are
interesting.
5 continents.
Oh,
And Oceania,
okay.
I think, included Antarctica in that
Oh.
mix.
No.
So she would say Antarctica or Oceania is one, which would include, like, in my mind, Australia is a continent and Antarctica is a continent, as I remember
Yes.
being taught.
Yes.
So that's one. And then I think maybe the Americas was one.
Oh, interesting.
And then we were talking about it
Okay.
when she was like, well, they're connected by land. And I was like, well, so are Europe and Asia and
Yep.
kind of Africa. You know, so that
And
it was
Africa,
an interesting...
if you go all the way around, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. Like, it depends on, like, there's not actually a right and wrong because it's all political unless you go with land masses. And then there's like 1 million continents because of all the islands.
Well, yeah. Yeah, continents is definitely a subjective thing. If we want to throw that in with, I've heard this analogy made before, with planets, since I'm a science guy, right? And
Is
so, like,
Pluto a
what
planet?
is a... No,
Do you
it's a
believe
dwarf planet.
that? Okay.
Fully. We can talk about that later if you really want to. It's not so much a travel thing, unless we're going to do a trip to Pluto.
Well, you know.
I mean, only, it's going to take a little while if we wanted to get there, but...
Yeah, I don't know if I want to make that commitment. I like, going to lots of different places. So, yeah. I don't know if I'm in for the time commitment or the financial commitment, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and the fact that it's probably not a return trip.
Oh, man. Okay. Well. Okay, so you've been to 4 continents?
1, 2, 3, yeah, 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So not Antarctica, not Africa, and not
And
Asia.
not Asia.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Wait, where in South America did you go?
Ecuador.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so you went to Ecuador. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was actually my first international experience was to
Ooh.
Ecuador.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Europe is when you visited the most. How many times have you been to Europe?
Oh, many. 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 10 times.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Is that the one?
Oh, 11,
11. Okay.
because Iceland counts.
Is Iceland part of Europe?
It is technically part of Europe, yes.
Oh, I assumed it was kind of more part of North America. Interesting. Okay.
It's closer to Europe.
Okay. There you go. Then what is Hawaii? Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
So lots of travels, lots of international. How about states? Where are we at with states? Do you care about states?
I mean, I feel like I've done less travel in the U.S. than
Yeah.
I've done internationally.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I counted, and it's been a while now, and it was very, very similar to the number of states I'd been to and the number of countries that
Oh.
I'd been to. Because I've grown up on the West Coast, so the west side of the U.S. is definitely where I have more travel experience. Obviously, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado. I've been to Virginia and Massachusetts,
Okay.
and Florida, Alabama, Tennessee.
Okay.
And Texas. And I'm not counting places where I've only been in the airport.
I would agree. I
don't
think that's
really
very
count that.
important with countries and with states that
Yes.
you don't get to count those. Yeah.
No, if you leave the airport and come back to the airport, even with a day, to me that counts. But if you're
Agreed.
just in the airport, it
Yep.
doesn't really count.
Yep, I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think, or like if you were on a train and the train went through the country, but you didn't stop in the country, I wouldn't really count that one either.
Ooh, yeah, I haven't really thought about that. Yeah, probably not. I mean, I would count that more than the airport because you could at least see some things about the country.
You were closer to the
But-
land. Wait, no,
Yeah.
no, airports are on land too. Never mind.
Yes. Where were you thinking they were? They were in the sky?
For a second, it was like, what did the plane go over?
Oh, well, okay. Yep. Sure. I guess that works.
Never mind. I got confused.
Okay.
Well, Ryan, I have a very important question for you.
Okay.
You've never heard this question before. We did not come up with it together because you're a guest
No.
on this show.
Yes.
Why do you travel?
So many reasons why I travel. I love travel for a whole host of reasons. I enjoy seeing other cultures and other perspectives on the way people look at life. Because it's not just something like a language, although that is something, but also just a way of looking at the world can be different, and oftentimes in ways that you wouldn't expect. So there are things that are a part of our culture that we don't even recognize are a part of our culture because they're so normal. And when you go into another culture, sometimes those things get highlighted, and you're like, oh, I guess everybody doesn't do it that way or think about it that way or whatever. And so I really enjoy that. I really enjoy, well, for Europe, I enjoy a lot of the things that there are in Europe to see. Sites that you can't see here. And like, I'm not a particular history person, but at the same time, just things that have been around for so much longer than anything here, especially since, we live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So even in the U.S., our stuff is young.
Yeah.
Even by U.S. standards. But then you go to a lot of other countries and things are significantly older and have a lot more history, not so much in just like, in this year, this thing happened and whatever, but just the amount of time that has passed at those places. Yeah.
That's very cool. Awesome. And what type of traveler are you?
So a large amount of my travel has been with groups of people.
Okay.
not necessarily because that's the way I prefer to travel, but because that's been the way I've had access to travel. So I've taken a number of student groups with school to different places. I've also served on teams that have done we've done English camps in Europe. And so those have had student / young adults kind of groups that I've been a part of. And that's been the bulk of my travel, has been that type. So in general, that's the type of traveler I am because that's what I do. But what I would prefer to do as a traveler would be a relatively small group of people, not so much in a tour group, with some freedom. And when I get to plan my time, I usually like to have a day in a city where there's nothing planned and I can just kind of walk and explore and just kind of observe and take in the local culture and scenery and buildings and streets and whatever else it is. So I would say that I'm at the same time, I don't like to just wing it. I like to have a plan. I like to know where I'm going to be and when. So I prefer to plan for the day that is unplanned, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what are the things that you do want to make sure are planned if you're into this planning stuff? What are those pieces?
For me, where I'm staying is something that I want to have planned ahead of time. So where's my lodging? I'm not really a hostel person. And by that, I mean staying in hostels. I'm also not all that hostile to interact with, but that's not what I meant at that moment. So I know quite a few people who like to travel that way, and that's awesome for them. That's just not my jam. So I prefer to kind of know where I'm going to stay and kind of have at least the key places I would like to visit and see planned out. They may fluctuate from day to day depending on the places, but a lot of places, if you can get reservations ahead of time, you don't have to wait in lines as much. So that's another advantage of having things planned out. I actually have an entrance time for this, so I don't need to wait in line for an hour and a half to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower or whatever it happens to be. So,
okay. Do you want to make sure that you see the big things? So, if you're in Paris, are you I gotta make sure I go to the Eiffel Tower. I gotta make sure I go to the Arc de Triomphe, those things, or is it kind of depends on what it is, or kind of what's your balance of the main things that people know about the city versus the off the beaten path rando things?
Yeah, good question. I think I do like a lot of the big things just to be able to say that I've been there, and to decide what I think of it. With the Eiffel Tower, for example, I know that when it was first built, the Parisians did not like it at all. They thought it was ugly, and they thought it was an eyesore and things, and obviously since that has changed. But, to just be able to go and to see it and just kind of to have that as an experience.
Yeah.
The flip side is things like the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. I did that, and I never want to do that again. That was a total waste of time, in my opinion.
Why?
It was because you stand there for hours. They march down the street, do a couple of band numbers, and that's it. There are so many other things that I could do that would be way more worth my time. I felt like it was such a waste of time. So I think it's yes, there are certain things that are popular that I would want to check out.
Yeah.
But I also have an idea, depending on what the thing is, it may not be something that I care about. Museums, for example. I'm not a huge art or history person. So, I've been in the Louvre, and apparently you can spend multiple days going through the Louvre. I think we spent an hour, maybe 2 hours.
Did you find the Mona Lisa?
Good. Saw the Mona Lisa, which, by the way, was not very impressive.
No, it's really not.
No, it really wasn't. And the winged whatever of Salmon Thrace and the Venus de Milo and a few other cool Egyptian-y things, I think. And I'm good. I don't need to go back. It was very impressive, but I don't know enough about art to be super impressed by all these different things, and they all start to look the same to me just because I'm not a trained artist. But the flip side is, like, when I was in Sydney and I went to the Sydney Aquarium, I took at least 2 hours just to go through the Sydney Aquarium because I was so interested, because I'm a science guy, right? So, like, I enjoyed that so much more than I think a lot of people would. So it just kind of depends. I just kind of try and do the things that I know that I'm going to be interested in.
Yeah.
And I may pop into some of those other things, but not feel like I'm locked in. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer not to be in a tour group.
Yeah.
Because then I have more flexibility on how much time I spend someplace.
Do you enjoy planning travel? Like, is that fun for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Planning is definitely fun because it's the same reason why I like lesson planning for teaching.
Okay.
It's putting together a puzzle, and when you can get something to work all together nicely and neatly, the sense of accomplishment is so good.
Do you like research? Like, is researching the travel pieces for you fun as well?
I think it's less that I enjoy the research and more that I'm motivated by it being the best. I have to find the best thing and make the best choice.
Okay.
And the way to do that is to research. So it's not necessarily that, like, I just live for research, but I am definitely motivated by trying to find out where to go, where not to go. Did I make a good decision? How do I be the most efficient with my time? How do I avoid lines or avoid crowds?
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. And what is your number one travel tip? Everyone's on the edge of their seats. They're just waiting to hear.
Because obviously I am the most intelligent travel person to give advice. So, yes. No. My number one travel tip, I think, is know what you want.
Okay.
Like, go in with what you would like your trip to be, as opposed to just like, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of show up. Right? Like have a plan, but I don't want to say necessarily have a plan because not everybody travels quite that way. And so for some people who prefer more like free spirit, I'm going to figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
Like, know that that's what you want.
Okay. Yeah. Like
right?
your goal.
And so, yeah.
Not
so
a plan,
like
but a goal.
Yeah. Know how you want to travel and then make decisions that will reinforce that. Right? So it's like, I really want to see lots of things, and I don't really care if I, spend a lot of time in one place or that I'm, unpacking every night. Great. Then pop around from place to place to place. But if you don't like packing and unpacking, and if you don't like, being in a new place all the time, then don't, spend multiple days days like in a place, and just kind of use a home base and go out from there or whatever. But like, know what you would like it to be. And then of course the flip side, of course, is you got to be flexible, because it's usually not going to turn out exactly the way you want it to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's really good advice. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like we kind of know your deal with travel now.
My deal.
And so, kind of knowing who you are a little bit, I would love to hear, like, I want to hear about one trip. Like, what's like the trip? It was like, tell us a story, Ryan. But like, let's hear about one trip. I want to hear the details. How did it go? Just like all of the things, like, about one trip of the lifetime trip.
So I don't know if this is like the trip, but it definitely was an awesome trip. So in 2015, I was in Europe to help lead and kind of teach an English class, and I was going to go to so that was in Croatia, and then I was going to go visit some friends of mine in Slovenia after that, since I was already there. And if you aren't familiar with Eastern European geography, Croatia is just south of Slovenia, and both of them are just east of Italy. Nope. Yep, east. And so it's all like kind of right there, but the people I was going to see, there was a week in between when I was done in Croatia and when they were going to be available in Slovenia. So I had a week to kill somewhere in Europe. And I was like, awesome. I'm going to spend some time in Europe.
Mm.
So
There are
I
worse problems to
decided
have.
there are way worse problems to have. And I was going to be by myself.
Okay.
So I approached this like, okay, so where would I want to go that a lot of other people probably wouldn't? Because this is my opportunity to do that, right? So I was like, well, okay, so I'm not going to do like Rome or like
Yeah.
London or any of like those big cities.
Yeah.
I've been to London before. Still haven't been to Rome yet. I would like to go.
Ooh, yeah, Rome.
Yeah. But so I was like, okay, so I'm not going to do that because I can probably find someone who will want to do that at some point in the future. So I started thinking about, well, I love science, so what are some different like science sites? And the thing that kept coming to my mind was CERN in Switzerland. And
Which just
for
makes
those
me
who
think of
don't
cheese, but that's not a real thing, right?
CERN cheese? I don't.
Like when you told me
I
about
don't
going to
think so.
CERN, I just pictured like a place that makes
Oh,
cheese.
you're probably thinking Lucerne,
Oh!
which is the Safeway like dairy brand.
Is Lucerne? Tell me it's at least a city in Europe.
There is. It's very, very similar. It's in Switzerland,
Okay. Yeah,
but I don't think
Lucerne,
it's
Switzerland.
Lucerne. It's something else, but it's very, very similar.
There is a Lucerne, Switzerland. Okay,
Okay.
that makes me feel a little better than.
Yes, but I think that was where you got the cheese from. Yeah.
Ryan's super into cheese, as we all know.
Super into cheese. Yeah. So CERN is in Geneva. And so I started looking into what I was going to get to do. For those people who don't know, CERN is where currently the largest particle accelerator is in the world. And if you don't know what a particle accelerator is,
I might be one of those people.
The TV show The Flash. Have you ever seen The Flash?
No.
Oh. Well, if you have, there's a particle accelerator in there, even though they do it terribly and the science is awful in The Flash. Basically, it's a big, huge, I think the diameter of the loop is, I want to say like 27 kilometers, but it's this big, huge loop where they accelerate little tiny, tiny particles smaller than atoms called protons around close to the speed of light, and they smash them into each other and then look at the stuff that comes out of them to learn about small particles.
Oh, okay.
It's a big deal in physics. And then also astronomy.
Is that how the Flash gets his powers?
In the show, yes.
Okay, so did you enter into the particle accelerator, and now do you have the powers that the Flash has?
I am not at liberty to discuss that at this time.
How did you get home from this trip? That's what I want to know.
On an airplane. Yep.
Not running
So
really
anyway,
quickly.
so I was looking at doing a tour in CERN, which is in Geneva. And then I was looking at, okay, so if I'm in Switzerland, how do I get to Slovenia? Because there aren't a lot of places that fly into Ljubljana, which is the capital city of Slovenia where my friends live. And so I was looking online, trying to find out where I could actually get a flight from. And Zurich, which is the capital city of Switzerland, is one of the few places that will fly into Ljubljana. So I was like, perfect. And Zurich is in the north, Geneva is in the south. So I was like, oh, great. And then there's a train line that goes in between them. And Bern, which is also a relatively well-known Swiss city, is also along that route. And interestingly enough, Einstein lived in Bern. So yes. And so the more research I did, the more I found cool sciencey things. And so I planned the trip and did all of the stuff to kind of make it work in Switzerland. And so then I got to spend a week in Switzerland. So I started in Geneva.
Okay.
And the tour of CERN is really tricky. So they open up a certain number of slots for the tours, and I don't remember how far in advance. It's like a month in advance or something. But then they all fill up.
So like you probably already had your ticket and everything,
Well,
and like the
except
rest of
I
it
didn't.
booked. No, you didn't. Okay.
Oh, you mean like the ticket, like to fly?
Yeah, like you had your other plans, and then had to
Yes.
make sure that you knew
Yes.
when those tickets opened up.
Yes, correct. But the problem is with the time difference. Even though I was looking, I didn't get in soon enough to actually get the tickets for the tour.
Oh no. Okay.
So I was like, well, okay. But the thing what they do is if So they do it like whatever it is, a month or 2 months or 3 months. I don't remember how far it is ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then they open it up again a week before.
Okay. And were you already abroad by that point?
But at that point, yes, I was abroad. So I was on the same time. I was in the same time zone. And so that one, I literally, like, that morning, I was like on my laptop refreshing the page over and over and over again to see if I could get in. And I did, which was great.
Oh, good.
So I was able to get in. I got those tickets, which was great. And then, so I flew in to Geneva. I had an Airbnb there, which was actually the first time I used Airbnb was international, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I went to the tour office, like the tourist information office, and they had, I don't remember how much it was, but that you could buy a little, like a little mini MP3 player that had like 2 guided walking tours on it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what? It's going to be worth it because I don't really know a whole lot. The guidebook that I had didn't really have anything about Geneva. So I was like, okay. And so I did a couple of those. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say also then, like, that actually makes sense when you're going by yourself, because I think part of those times is like when you're traveling with other people, you're like, well, like, then we're just each going to be listening to our own things. And unless we like sync them up, then you can't even really like react to it together or anything, you know? And so that's a great thing, like, if you're traveling on your own, to be like, well, I don't need to pay attention to anybody else anyway, you know? And so might as well go do some, like, guided tours or whatever. So, yeah.
So it worked really well. So there were 2 of them, and, you know, it just kind of took me around the city, and I just kind of walked around, heard some stuff, kind of had to figure out how they were trying to describe stuff because some of it I got confused on. And it was cool to just kind of walk around the city. And I enjoy walking. I know you're a hiker. I'm not necessarily a hiker, but I do enjoy walking. And so being able to just kind of walk around the city and just kind of, again, see and observe and kind of people watch and all of that stuff was really, really fun. And I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
And the weather was great. Well, it was warm, but so then the next day I did my tour at CERN and I was like a kid in the candy store. It was so much fun and I geeked out so much. Like there's this cool like artwork sculpture metal thing like that's outside. It's technically on the grounds, but it's not like inside. And I probably spent 20 minutes just looking at that because of all of the cool stuff that was on it. And then went in for the actual tour, which was led by one of the physicists who actually works there, which was cool.
So cool.
Yeah, and then they took us into the actual I don't know if control room's the right word, but like where the physicists are actually like getting data from the detector, like right there. Like we went and this big glass kind of wall, so it's not like you're in the same room per se, but like you're watching them. You can see what's on their screens. There's this big huge wall that had projectors of all of the status of the different detectors and all that. It was super cool. It was really, really cool. And then after that I went to like the museum, which you've seen the original Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
So in this museum, they had these little pod chairs that look like the chairs, those like egg chairs that they sit in the beginning of Men in Black when they go in for that interview. You're going to Google it to see what they look like.
Yes, I am. How did you know? Men in Black pod chair.
Or egg chair, maybe? Anyway.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, so they had like
Will
little
Smith.
chairs like that, which was kind of fun. And then they had like I don't know if they're considered docents or not, but you know, the people who you can ask questions to like in a museum. And she's a physicist that worked there.
So she actually knows her stuff. Like,
oh yeah, because she actually works there. So I could ask her like all of the questions that I have that I don't know the answer to because I don't have anybody to ask. It was so cool
because it's so much better than like a tour guide who they like have them memorize the right amount of information to be able to give the tour is actually like an expert in the field. That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah. It was super cool and I learned a ton and it was super fun.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Also, I do want you to know that you can get one of those chairs from Target for $1,200.
Ooh, that's tempting. I may need one. Yeah.
Add it to that wish list of yours,
There you go.
Listeners,
there you go.
If you want to get Ryan a gift.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
That is
anyway,
so cool.
Yeah, and that was definitely the highlight of the trip. It was really, really cool. So that was CERN, and then that night, or that afternoon, I guess, I went back into the city in Geneva and did the second walking tour, which was longer. And I made the mistake of walking that walking tour instead of trying to rent a bike.
But it is a walking tour?
Well, it sort of is, but even though the guy at the tourist information office he said the second one's longer, so sometimes it's better to just rent a bike or whatever. I thought that I knew where a bike place was, and I couldn't find it. Okay. So I was like, well, I'll just walk. It won't be that big a deal. It was a long walk.
Really?
It was a long walk, and I think I got a blister. So it was not super fun.
Wow. Okay.
But it was cool because part of the UN is in Geneva. So I got to walk past the UN.
That's
Red Cross is based in Geneva. So I walked past the Red Cross building, the headquarters of the Red Cross, and got to hear some of the history of the Red Cross. And there was this really cool park down there. So there's a lake. Geneva is on the south side of a lake. I think it's Lake Geneva, I think.
Okay.
And so kind of walked around this big park, and there was another museum that I found that had cool sciencey things in it. And it was a beautiful walk and a beautiful afternoon. Mm-hmm. It was really hot, and I was tired, but it was a good use of the day, I felt like.
Cool.
So then the next day, I got to figure out the train system in Switzerland. And all the stuff I had read before I went said you can buy your train tickets ahead of time, but it's actually cheaper to buy them in the country, and the system is so easy to use, you don't really need to do it ahead of time.
Okay.
I was like, okay. So I got a rail pass and found the right train, and then trained up to Bern.
Okay.
Which is, now that I think I said earlier that Zurich is the capital. I think that's a lie. I think Bern is the capital, and Zurich is the business center. I think I misspoke. Are you going to check me?
Hey Siri, what is the capital of Switzerland?
I'm pretty sure now that it's Bern.
She's still just saying go ahead. What is the capital of Switzerland? Okay. My Hey Siri does not count to say Hey Siri.
Okay, Google.
Oh, no.
What's the capital of Switzerland?
I searched the web and found this capital, Bern.
Yep, so it's Bern.
Why won't she tell me?
I don't know.
That. Bern is the capital of Switzerland.
Oh, and
mine
you
has
have
a
an
British accent. Oh, and a map. There
so
you
yes,
go.
it's Bern.
Okay.
So I apologize.
There
I
we go.
misspoke earlier.
How dare you?
I know. Anyway, so it's a smallish city. It's not super big, but it's really cool. I really enjoyed it. There's this amazing clock with all of these astronomical different hands and all of these things that it shows. And Bern is, I think it's bear. I think it means bear because they have these bears that live in Bern.
Wait, you saw bears?
Yeah,
There's
they're in
hanging
this.
out?
Well, not on the street. There's a a park sort of a thing, and they're behind fences and stuff. But
so are what?
It's not a zoo because it's just bears.
Does it not count as a zoo if it's only one animal?
I mean, I guess I don't think of it as counting
but
if it's
so
just one
they
animal.
are trapped. I mean, not trapped, but they can't leave.
They're in captivity.
Okay, that's the word. It's not a zoo because it's just bears.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way I think about it. You think of a zoo and it has multiple.
So there's
right?
people taking care, feeding the bears.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And are there bears in the hills nearby too, or then they
probably
add them
to
the cage if they come into town, or
I doubt they add him to the cage if they come into town. But anyway.
That's so funny that it's just named after, like, this town is called Bear. Here are the bears. They're in this cage.
I mean, there's probably more to it than that, but like I said, I'm not a history guy, so I'm probably missing
That's
something.
so funny. So you could just see them, or did you have to, like, pay to go see the bears?
No, you don't have to pay.
They're
They're part
just
of the
like
city.
a fence, and there's some bears hanging out inside.
Yeah, so like the main part of the city is this big, long road.
Okay.
And so you go from one end down to the other, and the river goes through down at the far end.
Okay.
And then the bears are just down there.
Just chilling. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I walked there. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So funny.
But the thing that I did in Bern that I enjoyed much more than that was I went to the Einstein Museum.
Ooh.
And I was there until it closed. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it because there was some history, but for me, it was in the context of Einstein's life.
Okay.
Right? And so he was a patent clerk in Bern when he like wrote some of his famous papers, but he also had like so there's some like Jewish backgrounds and like stuff with World War II and the Nazis and
Wow.
all sorts of really interesting things, as well as like his science and the stuff that he came up with and that sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed it. If you're not super into science and Einstein, I wouldn't recommend it.
What if you don't know much about science, but you would find it interesting still? Like,
Then, I mean, yeah, like I loved the museum. The thing,
Okay.
I came to this conclusion this last April when I was in Iceland, where I think this is the deal about museums and most museums is in order for them to be interesting, you have to come with your own background knowledge. Right? Like museums are usually artifacts. They're like things that really are disconnected from each other unless you have the background knowledge to make the connections between them.
sure.
So I go into a history museum and I don't really have the background knowledge. So it's just a bunch of artifacts. Okay, that's old. Yep, that thing's old. That thing's less old than that thing. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, although it makes me wonder, part of it is how well, I don't know if well is the right word, but like I have been to museums where they do kind of like walk you through something more and like
Yes.
teach you. So I think
Yes.
like it's possible to go to a museum and actually like learn like you don't know
Yes.
anything about it, but I think you're right. It's more common just to be like, here are things, you can go look at those things if you want to. And
yes,
you know what I mean?
I would
And
agree
so-
with that.
Yeah,
no,
but
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And later on, I'll tell you about a museum that I feel like did a really good job of connecting those dots.
okay. Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I came up with this idea. But yeah, so
Interesting.
Anyway, so this museum, I feel like because I know a lot about Einstein already, I was able to connect a lot of those dots. Like it
Got
was a
it.
well-done museum.
Yeah.
And if you're into history, there's a fair amount of history there. So you can definitely enjoy it, but it's all focused on Einstein. So if you don't have any interest in science and you don't have any interest in Einstein or like World War II era things, I don't know that there'd be a lot that's of interest to you. But if it is interesting, if you do find those topics interesting, then it's a great museum. Like I
Cool.
loved it. I thought it was
Cool.
great.
So solid maybe for me probably then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And so that was my first day in Bern. And then my second day in Bern, I actually didn't go to Bern. And just kind of on a whim, I mean, not exactly. It wasn't like that day. But the day before I had left, a coworker said, "Oh, you're going to Switzerland?" And she actually lived in France, right up on the Swiss-French border for a bunch
Okay.
of years. She's like, "Oh, you have to do this hike." And she told me about this specific hike. I was
Okay.
like, okay. And so I had looked it up kind of in my guidebook, and it actually was recommended. So I took the train from Bern out to Interlaken, which is in the Swiss Alps.
Okay.
And then I took another train to another city that I don't remember. And then I took like a gondola up super high. And we were like
yes.
up in the Swiss Alps, and then I did a hike, and it was a really like low key hike.
Okay.
Because I was up at the highest part, and I was hiking down.
Okay. I got you.
And down to this city called Kleinenscheidig.
Okay.
And it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was like there were some clouds, but the right amount so that the clouds made it more beautiful. And like there were clouds like kind of blowing up over one of the hills, which was super cool. And then it cleared, and it was sunny, and there was snow on the mountain. It was gorgeous.
Oh, that's so
it was
fun.
Absolutely gorgeous. I'm so glad that I did the extra day trip.
Cool.
Out there.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, and I mean, I just like went to like one of the local grocery stores to buy lunch and just got like a sandwich and like a Coke or something and just like put it in my backpack and stopped partway up and then like just had lunch in the Swiss Alps.
Wow. Oh, that's so fun. Were there just like crazy mountains everywhere?
Once I got out there, yes, there were.
Okay. Yeah.
Like in Bern, no.
Okay.
But like, yeah, and it was just gorgeous and super high, which that was the thing that I forgot when I got back. I was like, why does my face feel so tight? I forgot. When you are up closer to when the atmosphere is thinner, it's easier to get a sunburn.
There it is.
Totally forgot about it.
The good thing is, like, since you really wanted this trip to be like a science trip, it's really good for you to experience science things like altitude.
Yes.
And sunburn. Are those science things?
I mean, sure. We can say that they're science.
Yep. Yeah, so that's just you like doing an experiment, maybe.
Yep, that's totally why I did it. I was choosing to run an experiment.
So that's just really great and fun for everybody then. So yeah.
So, but I would totally recommend going into the Alps, and I would go back because it's beautiful. It's
like
gorgeous.
Keeps getting higher on my list. Like, the more people talk about it, it's like,
well, it's funny
up there.
because Switzerland was never a place that was on my list.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, yeah, it'd be interesting. Okay, whatever. And then I was like, oh, and CERN would be fun. And I started to do more research and, you know, found these things. And now that I've been there, I would totally go back. And I would love to see more of the country. Because I was only there for, I don't think even a full week. It was like 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see more. Love to see more.
Cool. Very cool.
So got back to Bern and then got into Einstein's flat where he lived.
Did you break in or was this allowed?
Yep. I totally broke in. No, it's a tourist thing.
Okay.
And it was not that great or that exciting. And I don't know that I got in for like half off or something because they were only going to be open for another like 20 minutes or something. So the gal was really nice and was like, yeah, I mean, we're about ready to close, but if you want to, I mean, you can come in for like however much it was less. I was like, sure.
Okay.
And it's like a room and a half. And that's like it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
You're like, okay, this is where they live.
And I'm like even an Einstein person. I was like, I don't know that I'd recommend that to people. I mean, if you have the time, sure. But
yeah,
it's
that's
not
always
that
interesting
impressive.
when it's like whoever, like people from history, when you go to their town, and part of it frequently is to get to see their house, and it's like I feel like it's very hit or miss for like how fun that is,
yeah,
and everything. I'm not as into it, but I also don't care if I'm like, oh, this is the bed that they slept on. And to some people, that matters more,
right?
And is like
right.
They have more attachment to like objects or things like that, I think. And so maybe that's part of it too. But yeah.
Could be.
Interesting. Okay. So that was Bern.
So that was Bern. And then I took the train again up to Zurich. And I was only in Zurich for one night. And I'm really glad I was only there for one night. Not that anything in Zurich was bad, but they were doing, I don't remember what it was called, Zurich Days or something like that. It was a big festival while I was there, so there were lots of people.
Okay.
And you know this, but our listeners may not. I'm an introvert. And so I had been traveling by myself for several, like 3-4 days at that point. And so like I found I was feeling very, very alone in a way that I don't very often.
Okay.
And the fact that there were all of these people around and I knew none of them accentuated how alone I felt.
Huh.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You're like,
So,
it's
which
party
is
time,
odd
but not
because-
for me.
Exactly. And so I enjoyed it. There was this great little waffle stand where I got a really good waffle, and I kind of walked around and did another like walking tour sort of a thing, and it was fine, but there wasn't anything all that interesting, other than the fact that it was a Swiss city. Like there wasn't anything that stood out that I really, really enjoyed. And I had already done CERN and the Einstein Museum and hiking in the Alps. So like the bar was pretty high at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, so I was only there for one night, which was
Okay.
great. And then I flew out and flew to Ljubljana the next day.
Nice.
Took a train to the airport, and that was Switzerland.
That was Switzerland. That's very cool. Oh, how fun. Well, thanks for sharing about that.
You are welcome. It was
So
a lot of fun.
I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
Based on the title of this show, Take Me With You.
Yes.
If you could take me with you to one thing on your trip, what would it be and why?
From this trip, I would say, knowing you, Cheryl,
Yeah.
I would take you hiking in the Alps. Because
Good
I know
choice.
that you really like hiking. Most of the other cool things I did were sciencey, and I think you could definitely enjoy them, but I think you would love hiking in the Alps.
Yeah.
That's where I would take you.
That's definitely on my travel bucket list. So, yeah, that sounds fantastic. Although I would probably want to hike up and then take the gondola down. But maybe you and I
Well,
could like high five in the middle or something.
There
So,
you go. Well, one of the cool thing is there's all sorts of different ways that you can do the hike.
Cool.
So, like, you can gondola up and then you can hike down to the city, and then I took a train from Kleine Scheidegg down the rest of the way. But you
Cool.
can keep hiking.
Nice. Oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's not like that's just the one hike.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of things you could do. So you could have hiked, from part way up and then take the gondola up and hike back down, or like there's lots
Nice.
of options to kind of fit it to be what you want it to be. I
That's
didn't have a
awesome.
ton of time.
Sure,
I was
yeah. Mm-hmm,
only there for a day and I had to take the train back and all that stuff. But if you were to, do more of a hiking trip, you could definitely
That's
do a lot
awesome.
more.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. That sounds fantastic. Man, Switzerland, it's got to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the next trip? What's your next thing?
So my next trip is not to Europe.
Okay.
My next trip, I'm actually leaving on in just a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
A friend and I are going to do a road trip.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
So I live in the Seattle area, and so we're going to road trip down. We're going to go from Seattle down to Portland, and then we're going to head over west to the coast, and we're going to go down Highway 101 down to the Redwoods
so
in Northern
fun.
California.
So
Yeah.
fun.
Neither of us
Okay.
have been there before, and I was
It's
looking at my
awesome.
summer calendar and realized it was like there was nothing fun scheduled. I was like, I need to change that.
Yeah.
So we both had the time off, and we're gonna just go for 4 or maybe 5 days, just kind of do the little
That's
road trip and
awesome.
check out the redwoods.
That's so fun. Oh, you're going to love it. It's very cool. The fun thing with the Redwoods, because I just went there a year ago.
Yeah.
And, no picture does them justice. The closest you can
Yeah.
get is when you have a person next to them, or like I found this one tree that I could stand inside of, and then it's like, look at this person inside of this very, very large tree. But like, it's like absolutely breathtaking, absolutely unbelievable, because like any photo you've seen, like it's the opposite of the Mona Lisa. Where like you see
Yeah.
the pictures and you're like, this is a pretty cool painting. You see it in your person and you're like, why are the replicas larger than the original? And this
Yeah.
is like nothing can really like show you how large the redwoods are other than just like being there and everything. So it's very
That's cool.
And it is cool, something in the United States that is very old. So that's like
Yes.
a fun
Yes.
thing to go to as well.
So do you have any tips or suggestions?
Yeah, okay. So a couple things. When there are opportunities to get food or gas, you should take them, because
Oh, okay.
there's just stretches where you're like, wait, if we want to stop for lunch, where can we go? And so like I would say like kind of look ahead maybe like as far as like what's our next opportunity of like a place to go to eat or things like that.
Okay.
At what point are you going to hit the 101? Like, are you going to go down like the Oregon coast too, or do you know
Yeah,
yet?
so we're gonna head out to 101 from Portland. We're gonna
Great.
stop at Tillamook
Okay.
on our way down
Cheese and ice
because
Yep.
because it's Tillamook and we
Yep.
should.
Uh-huh.
So and then we're just kind of planning to stay down 101 because the drive on I-5 is not that exciting.
Yeah.
So we thought we could do a more pretty driving down 101.
Yeah. There's
We'll
a
probably
fun
come back up
aquarium
I-5
in
but-
Oregon along
Yeah.
the coast. So that's a
Okay.
fun one. It's fun to go look at the dunes. They're really fun, the sand dunes along the Oregon coast.
Mhm.
When I was in the Redwoods, so I went with my sister and her husband and my dog. And being a national park, there's really limited. Now, this doesn't affect you, but I'll share about this.
Sure.
Is dogs are allowed like on the road areas, but not necessarily like on the walking trails or things like that. And so there were
okay.
like different like little walks we wanted to do where it was like, well, Gracie can't come and this is a hot day, and so like what we did since we brought Gracie because we were coming back from a family reunion. And so it was like, no, I'm bringing her. But then also like one of them, I just said, you guys go do it because it was only like a mile and it was to a really big tree. And so it was like, I'll just hang. So I just kind of hung out. And then what we ended up doing is, so when I was young, my family went to the Redwoods and there's this thing. Have you seen anything about the Trees of Mystery yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like
The tourist trap.
Such a high level of tourist trap that it's very entertaining.
So like I
Very
should go
entertaining.
because it's so bad.
Well, this is okay. I'll tell you about it and then you can choose. So when my
Okay.
family went down, we did not actually pay to go inside of the Trees of Mystery. We stopped by the gift shop and then found out that like you could pay to go in it. And we were asking like, well, what is it? And they were like, well, it's trees. And we're like, but it's like redwoods. Like there's redwoods all over the
Everywhere,
place that
yeah.
you are not paying to look at. Other than like in gas and in time, but that's all you're paying. And so,
Right.
the gift shop is enormous. I actually did get redwood perfume there this most recent time, which is really fun.
Redwood perfume?
Yeah, it's kind of great.
Like so you smell like the redwoods?
Yeah, kind of like a tree. I liked it, but I live in the woods, so
True.
And so, but. Okay, it became a joke in our family for years because we got some like bookmark there or something, and then my dad would read to our family, and he used his Trees of Mystery bookmark, and we had made a lot of jokes about how dumb the Trees of Mystery were, even though we didn't even go in it, but we're like, it's so dumb. So then we were like, he was like reading Harry Potter to us, and then he'd like work it in as he'd like start the chapter, and he'd be like, and then Harry Potter went in the Trees of Mystery. And so it was like this family joke for years. And so my sister and I were kind of like half joking, half serious. We should actually like go to it this time. But then we started researching like dog friendly places. The Trees of Mystery is dog friendly. So you can walk on all these trails because it's it's like several miles of walking if you want it to be, I think. And so we were like, well, this way we can do walking through the redwoods with my dog. And they have one of those like gondola sky trail things
Yeah, I've seen that.
included in it, and dogs can go on that. And so we were like, this is a way we spent like several hours we could be outside and not just driving through the trees with my dog. And so that was very cool. Also, because actually it was probably mainly because it was a childhood joke, because my sister's husband, Nate, was more laughing at us laughing at it than actually enjoying ourselves. We also love, it's kind of like, do you like watching a bad movie? Like
Sometimes. It
good?
depends.
This is like that level of entertainment where like there's a huge focus on Paul Bunyan, because there's like a
I've seen the
giant Paul
pictures.
Bunyan and the ox outside of the entrance, but you go through this whole walk where you learn about Paul Bunyan's life. But it's like extremely, first of all, the quality is really low and it's extremely run down. And so, like, you push these little, like, not intercom, but these little, like, there's, like, these boxes with, like, a speaker, and you push a button, and it tells you a story about Paul Bunyan's life. And you go through this whole trail and you see these wood carvings representing different things that happened in his life. And then you hear the story. And each box is like more falling apart than the last one.
Oh, jeez.
And it's like that old-timey storyteller voice that seems very Disney, where it's like, now Paul had an ox named Babe, and he grew to be the same size. Like that voice. And that's just all like so hokey and awful that we were like losing it. We thought it was so funny. And then there's actually this really like beautiful cluster of trees where some people even get married there. And they have this like music playing there like all the time. And it's this song that's like about something about a tree. It sounds like old timey Disney as well, where it's like a tree, and like that.
Oh gosh!
Like it sounds maybe like the start of like Snow White or Sleeping Beauty or something, like that style of music. And so it's just like so funny, and then also surrounded by very impressive trees, but like everything they're doing makes them less impressive. Like there's like signs pointing to random trees, but they're not the most impressive trees. They're just like some trees. And then there was this one thing, it talked about the way certain trees grow, and we're like, no one knows why it does that. And I was like, that can't be true. I do not believe that.
I'm pretty sure that there are botanists that know how trees grow.
Like it was some weird, I don't remember if it was like, what, like the big, like round thing.
Like the sideways one that has like the
there's
trees
those,
coming up.
and you get to see those, which is very fun. But no, it's more like the giant clump that grows on the side of a tree sometimes. It's like giant or something like that. And it was just saying like no one knows how it does. And it was like, you're
that's
wrong.
Not true.
Like,
yeah, that's just not true.
And then like one thing was about like just some of the facts is definitely in quotes that it was saying about trees. We're just like, but so
no.
It depends on if that would infuriate you or entertain you, I think.
Did you go in the gondola?
Yeah, yeah, that was really fun.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good because you're like going through these redwood trees up this thing, and then like you get like it's almost like a treehouse level thing that you get to be in at the top of it, and then you can go back down, so you can get out at the top. So that was fun. But
we'll see.
Yeah, it depends on if you're in the mood for like levels of cheese. And
I don't know that Kyle's going to have the patience for that.
But definitely, like, stop, take a picture with Paul Bunyan, like, giant guy. Go in the gift shop.
Go to the gift shop.
Yeah, there is
Maybe
fudge
get a
in
bookmark.
the gift shop, and the fudge was very good. So that's fun. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good to know.
So, yeah, but you're going to have a lot of fun. Really fun, like, gorgeous beaches along there, too, and all that. Yeah. So it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm very excited
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh man, well, that's so exciting. Yay. Next trips are always the best trips, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're gonna enter in now we're done with Ryan's interview. Now you can join me as being a co-host of this podcast.
Oh yay, I get to host now.
This is also your party now.
Yay.
So do you want to tell our listeners about our final segment here?
Sure. So the final thing that we're going to do is a segment that we call Wish You Were Here. So this is like if you think of, I don't know how many people send postcards anymore, but kind of the postcard that has that snapshot of that one thing, or now it may be like your Instagram post that you would do, and it's like that one thing from that one trip that you're like, oh my gosh, this one thing is so cool. I wish you were here to see it yourself because it's so cool. I wish you were here. So it's kind of just the idea of each time that we interview someone, we will have both Cheryl and myself and our guest share one wish you were here moment or place, and probably unrelated to the place that our guest has shared about, but just as a cool little tidbit. It's just going to be real quick. What is this thing and what makes it cool, and why you think people would want to be there? So Cheryl, why don't you start? What's your wish you were here place for us today?
Okay, so this one I actually thought of. This was not planned. This one I thought of as you were talking about museums, and I have a museum that I would really recommend. And well, yeah, I think it's still it's under the category of museum. It's the 9/11 museum.
Oh yeah,
in New York. I went to New York last fall and was told like this is a really great thing to go to, and I had some alone time, and I think museums are a great thing to do alone. And so
Yep.
it really was one where you could walk in not knowing what happened on 9/11 and get the full picture, and they walk you through the whole story, like of what led up to it. And they even tell you about the buildings themselves, like the history of like when the buildings were built, and then what happened that day, and then how people responded, and then like what's happened since then. And so they walk you through the whole thing. It is very emotional, and I mean they're playing like phone calls from people who were on the plane. So like,
oh boy,
it is emotional. It is also so well done. It's so purposeful in like the order. Like it's one of those where you go through in a specific order. They have really beautiful art there as well. They even have this one giant wall of, I think the name of the piece is like The Color of the Sky That Day or something like that. And it's all these rectangles, just like I think like 8.5 by 11s that are watercolored, different shades of blue. And it's like talking about how like people had a hard time remembering what color the sky was that day. And then it has this really, I don't remember what the quote was, but there's a giant quote on it. And so that was really gorgeous. But I mean, they have like pieces of the buildings around there, like and everything. And then right outside it, I don't think I totally knew this, that they have not rebuilt in the places that the Twin Towers were. I don't know if I was fully aware of like what was done with that space. But they're both fountains now. So they're huge, but they're fountains that go down. As opposed to go up. So it's just like at eye level, and then it goes down into the earth, which is like very impactful. And I think I appreciate it because of like, I think how like correctly that like show, I don't know, like as far as thinking about losing these buildings, losing these people, for it to go down like that, you know, when the buildings went up and now the fountain goes down, is like very I guess an accurate way to like, and what a wonderful thing to like do with that space, to not rebuild. Because obviously, I mean, you think about like the value of that property or anything, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so I'm very impressed and appreciative that it hasn't been rebuilt as well. And then like the names of everyone who is lost are like on the sides of that fountain on this like almost like a railing thing. And it was very well done. I would really recommend it. And so I think that's a definitely like a worthwhile thing to do in New York. So, yeah.
Great.
It wasn't fun, but it was very good. And so, but it was one of those museums where I think actually like, I'm very impressed with how it feels like it was done right and everything, which is great. So, yeah. How about you? What's yours?
Yeah. So interestingly, my Wish You Were Here is also a museum.
Okay.
And in the same vein of what you're saying, is it's a museum that I think did a really good job of connecting the different pieces. So instead of it just being these isolated things, it was really interactive. So this last spring, I was in Iceland. Loved it, by the way. And there is a museum called the Lava Museum. It's relatively new. I think it's only been open for about a year. But it could possibly be the best museum I've ever been to. It was super interactive, and lots of, digital projections and things, which are great, but also like you could interact with them. You as an individual, you could like turn things and push buttons and drag things around, and it would change in response to what you did. And there were lots of things where you would like stand in a certain spot, and then it would be like telling you about the different types of earthquake waves that you can have, and you'd stand in a spot and it would shake so that you could feel what that type of earthquake wave would be like, and then you'd go stand in a different spot and it would shake the way that earthquake wave would shake. And like there were all of these things that were really interactive, and like they had all the different types of lava, not the actual lava, unfortunately. I was hoping that there was actual lava. It's the cooled lava, which we call rocks, in case you're wondering. But like they had the different types, but like you could like see them and see the differences, as opposed to just like, here's these things. They were all set up, and the lighting was super, I don't know, moody, I guess. But like it wasn't just like, here's a museum and these glass cases with things. It's like the stuff is out in front of you, and you can like, all the screens were like touch and interactive, and you could kind of go back and forth. So it was non-linear, and you could interact with it. And then there was a room where there's big giant screens, and you could choose, and you could they had the different volcanoes in Iceland projected, and you could choose which ones to make erupt, and then it would simulate what it would be like if that volcano erupted like right now, and the whole room would change and all these things. It was super cool. And like I took a bunch of high school students with me, and like they all agreed that it was really, really good. And so like I said, that kind of helped me figure out, like, I think the thing about a good museum is it makes those connections for you. And I think the Lava Museum, yes, I know a lot about the science, but even if you didn't, it makes those connections for you. And it sounds like what you said, right, with the 9/11 Museum.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. It's going to make those connections. So I think that's the sign of a really good, worthwhile museum. So I definitely would say, wish you were here with the Lava Museum.
Nice. Oh, very cool. Where in Iceland is that?
Yes. I don't know. It's.
I
mean,
thought that was
it's
like the name of a city.
Oh no, sorry. I don't know. It's in the middle of nowhere in Iceland, which is most of Iceland.
Okay. But I mean, if someone just Googled Lava Museum, like,
yeah,
there's
they
not,
could
like,
they could find it.
multiple options.
No, there aren't. It's in the southern-ish part. It's not super far from Reykjavik, the capital city.
Cool. Very cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we did it. We did our first episode.
Yay! Good for us.
And turns out we already have social media and
We
all
do.
these things ready to go.
We do.
Please follow us. We are on Twitter and Instagram at TMWY Podcast. That
Take
stands
me
for,
with you.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Also, you can call us or you can text us. And
Yes.
that's fun. I mean, by call us, I definitely mean leave us a voice message.
Yes.
We're not on call to answer your travel questions
No.
or anything. But if you want to leave us a voice message or you want to send us a text, we will, with questions or stories or anything, we can play that on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And that number is 406-763-8699, which spells 406 pod TMWY for Take Me With You. The 0 is nothing. Yeah, I even found this website that you could enter in a phone number and it would show you the different things it can spell. And for the 4, I think it'd be a D, and then it'd be 0, and then the 6, or whatever it was. And so it was just kind of
yeah, it didn't work so well, but that's fine.
No, I did that
That's
backwards in my brain. Yeah. So but we call that number. Yep.
Yep, you can leave us a message, tell us a cool thing, a trip that you took, or if there's a question before you take a trip that you'd like us or one of our guests to answer. Also, if you are on a trip and there's a cool place where you are and you would like to take us with you, you can take a picture and tag us at TMWY Podcast, Take Me With You Podcast, and say, hey, we wish you were here. And that would be super cool, so we can start seeing some of the travels that you guys are going on as well.
Yeah, we want to learn about all of the places.
All of the places.
So tell us about all the places. That's the goal. Also, thanks to Beth Morrell for our rad artwork.
Yes.
She is at Beth is something on the socials. And yeah, those are all the things.
All of the things.
Subscribe, please, because we're going to keep releasing episodes. Turns out this is not a one-off thing. This is now a new thing. So go ahead and subscribe on whatever podcatcher you are using, and you can rate and review us on iTunes and all of those things. Do we have an email address?
All of the different podcast
we do have an email address as well.
We do. It's the same thing. TMWYpodcast at gmail.com.
Boom.
So you can send us questions there too, or tell us how much you love our podcast, or maybe some constructive criticism. Maybe. I don't know if I'm ready to take that yet. I don't know if I can handle that.
Or if you have guests or that potential guest ideas, we would love to hear those as well. So
yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for listening. And next time, take me with you.
Take me with you.